The ship shook hard. Metal screamed against metal. Commander Elena Vasquez grabbed the console in front of her and held on tight. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms filled the air with their angry noise. "What hit us?" she shouted. "Unknown vessel, Commander!" Torres, her young engineer, called back. His voice was shaking. "It came out of nowhere. Our shields are down. Engines are dead." Elena looked at the main screen. A massive ship hung in space before them. It was black and shaped like a crescent moon. Strange symbols glowed on its surface. In her 15 years of space travel, she had never seen anything like it. This was supposed to be a simple mining mission, Earth's first journey beyond the solar system. 12 crew members. A small ship. Nothing special. They were looking for minerals on distant asteroids. Nobody expected to find alien life, but alien life had found them. The ship shook again. This time, Elena heard something cutting through the hull. The sound was like a giant knife going through metal. Her crew gathered around her. 12 faces looked at her with fear in their eyes. They were scientists, engineers, pilots, not soldiers. "Stay calm," Elena said. Her voice was steady. "Whatever happens, stay together." The wall exploded inward. Gray smoke filled the room. Through the smoke came tall figures. They were at least 7 feet tall. Their skin was pale blue, almost white. They had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond shape on their faces. Their bodies were thin and covered in silver armor. One of them stepped forward. It looked at the humans the way a person might look at insects. It pointed at Elena's crew and made a clicking sound with its throat. More aliens poured in. They grabbed the humans one by one. Elena watched as her people screamed and struggled. The aliens were strong, much stronger than humans. Resistance meant nothing to them. An alien grabbed Elena's arm. Its grip was like cold iron. She did not scream. She did not struggle. She just looked at the creature's 4 eyes and stayed silent. The alien seemed confused by this. It clicked at her. She did not respond. They were taken through dark corridors to the alien ship. The inside was cold and smelled like chemicals Elena could not name. Everything was made of dark metal. Strange lights pulsed in the walls like heartbeats. The aliens pushed them into a large room. More aliens waited there. One of them was different from the others. It wore a red robe and had golden bands around its arms. When it spoke, the sound was translated by a small device floating near its head. "Humans," it said. The word came out flat and cold. "From the planet called Earth, you are now property of the Velthari Dominion." Elena stepped forward. "We are not property, we are—" An alien guard hit her across the face. She fell to the ground. Blood filled her mouth. She spit it out and slowly stood back up. The robed alien watched her with interest. "This one has spirit," it said. "Good. The arena loves spirit." The arena. Elena did not know what that meant yet, but she would learn. The aliens began sorting them. They looked at each human carefully. They checked their muscles, their teeth, their eyes. It was like watching animals being sorted at a market. Some of the crew were pushed to the left, some to the right. Elena noticed that the weaker ones were pushed to the right. Torres, the young engineer, was among them. He was small and thin, not strong. When he was pushed toward the right group, he looked at Elena with terror in his eyes. "The ones on the right are useless," the robed alien said. "They will be disposed of." Disposed of. The words hit Elena like a hammer. She looked at Torres. He was 23 years old. He had a mother back on Earth. He liked to play guitar and tell bad jokes. He was not useless. He was human. An alien guard grabbed Torres by the neck. It started dragging him toward a dark door at the back of the room. Elena moved without thinking. She crossed the distance in 3 steps. Her hand found the weak point in the alien's armor. The place where the arm met the body. She grabbed, twisted, and pulled. The alien's arm broke with a loud crack. It screamed and fell to its knees. Torres dropped to the floor, coughing. The room went silent. Every alien turned to look at Elena. She stood over the fallen guard, her chest rising and falling. Blood dripped from her cut lip. Her eyes were hard and cold. The robed alien stared at her. It seemed shocked. It made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Interesting," it said. "Most primitives beg. They cry. They ask for mercy. You—" It tilted its head. "You just broke one of my guards." Elena said nothing. She just stared back. Do you not understand your situation, human? You are nothing here. Less than nothing. You are entertainment. You will fight in our arenas until you die. That is your only future. Elena still said nothing. The robed alien moved closer. It was so tall that it had to bend down to look at her face. Do you not have words? Do you not want to beg? To ask why this is happening? To plead for your life? Elena met its four eyes. No, she said. Just one word. Nothing more. The alien stood straight. It made a gesture with its long fingers. Take her to the isolation pits. She will be the first to fight. Let us see how long her silence lasts. Guards grabbed Elena. They dragged her away from her crew. She heard her people calling after her. She heard Torres shouting that they would find a way to save her. She heard promises of rescue. She did not answer. She did not look back. They took her down into the depths of the alien ship. The corridors became narrower. The lights became dimmer. Finally, they threw her into a small cell. The walls were made of black stone. The floor was covered with old stains that might have been blood. The door slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed in the darkness. Elena sat down in the corner. She touched her broken lip. She looked at the blood on her fingers. Somewhere above her, her crew was being taken to their own cages. Somewhere above her, aliens were preparing an arena for her death. Somewhere above her, creatures from across the galaxy were getting ready to watch her die. She closed her eyes. She did not pray. She did not cry. She did not hope for rescue. She simply breathed in and breathed out. And she began to plan. 3 days passed in darkness. They gave Elena water but no food. They wanted her weak. They wanted her afraid. They did not understand that hunger and darkness were old friends to humans. Her ancestors had survived ice ages, deserts, and wars. A few days in a dark cell was nothing. On the 4th day, the door opened. Bright light poured in. Elena covered her eyes with her hand. 2 guards grabbed her and pulled her to her feet. They dragged her through long corridors. Other prisoners watched from behind bars. Elena saw many different species. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had shapes that made no sense to her human eyes. All of them looked at her with the same expression. Pity. They knew where she was going. They had seen others go there before. None came back. The guards brought her to a large metal door. Strange sounds came from the other side. Roaring, screaming, the sound of many voices joined together. A Velthari officer stood by the door. It held a rusted blade in its hand. The blade was old and dull. Not a proper weapon, a joke. This is your weapon, the officer said. You will fight. If you win, you live another day. If you lose, it made a clicking sound that might have been a laugh. Well, you will not care about anything after that. Elena took the blade. She tested its weight. It was poorly balanced. The edge was barely sharp, a weapon meant for failure. What am I fighting? She asked. The officer's 4 eyes seemed to shine with cruel joy. A Kreth! Elena did not know what a Kreth was, but she saw the reactions of nearby prisoners. Some turned away. Some made sounds of prayer in languages she did not understand. One creature with 3 heads actually started crying. The doors opened. The arena was massive. It was a circle of sand surrounded by walls of black stone. Above the walls, seats rose high into the sky. Thousands of aliens sat in those seats, maybe millions. They were of every shape and size. Some floated in the air. Some hung from the ceiling. All of them were watching. At the far end of the arena, another door was opening. The Kreth came out. Elena felt her heart stop for just a moment. The creature was the size of a small truck. It had 8 limbs, each ending in claws that looked like curved swords. Its body was covered in hard black shell. Its head had no eyes that Elena could see, just a mouth filled with teeth that seemed to go back forever. The crowd roared with excitement. The Kreth screamed. The sound was like metal being torn apart. It was a sound of pure hunger and rage. Elena gripped her rusted blade. She took a deep breath. The Kreth charged. It moved fast. Faster than anything that size should move. Its 8 limbs carried it across the sand like a nightmare spider. Its mouth opened wide, ready to bite her in half. Elena did not run away. She ran toward it. The crowd went quiet. This was not normal. Prey ran away. Prey tried to escape. Prey did not run toward death. At the last moment, Elena dove to the side. The Creth's claws cut through empty air. She rolled across the sand and came up on her feet. As she rolled, her blade cut across one of the creature's back legs. Not deep, just enough to draw blood. The Creth screamed again. It turned and charged once more. Elena ran, but she did not run to escape. She ran to make the Creth chase her. She ran in circles around the arena. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs ached. And every time the Creth got close, she would turn and cut. A small wound here, a small wound there. Nothing fatal, nothing that would stop it. The crowd began to grow confused. This was not how fights worked. Fights were fast and bloody. Winners killed quickly. Losers died quickly. This human was doing neither. Minutes passed. The Creth kept chasing. Elena kept running. Blood dripped from dozens of small cuts on the creature's body. Its movements became slower. Its screams became weaker. This was humanity's oldest trick. Persistence hunting. Before humans had weapons, before they had fire, they had this one gift. They could run longer than anything else alive. They could chase prey until it simply fell down from exhaustion. They could outlast any creature in existence. The Creth did not know this. How could it? On its homeworld, it was the ultimate predator. Nothing ran from it for long. Nothing survived long enough to tire it out. Until now. After 20 minutes, the Creth stumbled. Its 8 legs shook. Foam dripped from its mouth. Its body was covered in blood from 100 small cuts. Elena stopped running. She turned to face the creature. The Creth tried to charge again. It made it 3 steps before its front legs gave out. It crashed into the sand and lay there, breathing hard. Its mouth still opened and closed, trying to bite, but it could not rise. Elena walked toward it slowly. The crowd was completely silent. She stood over the fallen monster. It looked up at her with its eyeless face. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. Elena raised her blade. For a moment, she looked at the creature. It was a killer, a monster. But it was also just a beast doing what its nature demanded. It had not chosen to be here. It had not chosen to fight her. They were both prisoners. She brought the blade down quick and clean, one strike to the soft spot behind the head. The Creth shuddered once and went still. Elena stood over the body. Blood soaked the sand beneath her feet. The crowd remained silent, waiting. Other fighters would have raised their arms. They would have screamed in victory. They would have given the crowd the show they wanted. That was what was expected. That was what would make the audience love them. Elena did none of these things. She dropped the blade on the sand. She looked up at the high box where the Velthari leaders sat. The High Arbiter was there, watching her with all 4 of his eyes. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She just stood there, covered in blood, and waited. The message was clear. She had won, but she would not perform for them. She would not dance for their entertainment. She would give them nothing but her survival. The High Arbiter leaned forward in his seat. His 4 eyes narrowed. Guards came to take Elena away. As she walked back toward the door, she passed by the edge of the arena. Other prisoners were there, watching through the bars. One of them, a creature with gray skin and a flat face, spoke to her in a rough whisper. "How did you do that? The Creth has killed 50 fighters. No one has ever—" Elena looked at the creature. "Humans are patient," she said. "We can wait longer than anything." She turned and walked through the door. The guards took her back to her cell. The door closed behind her, and she was alone in the darkness again. She sat down against the wall. Her body ached. Her muscles screamed. She had never been so tired in her life, but she was alive. She closed her eyes and let herself rest. Tomorrow there would be another fight, and another after that, and another after that. She would survive them all. Not for the crowd, not for the Velthari, not even for herself. She would survive because that was what humans did, and she would give them nothing else. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. Elena fought and survived, again and again and again. They sent beasts against her, giant creatures with poison claws, flying monsters with razor wings, things that crawled on 100 legs. She killed them all. They sent warriors against her. Fighters from conquered worlds who had survived their own arena battles. Some were fast, some were strong, some had weapons built into their bodies. She defeated them all. After every victory, she did the same thing. She dropped her weapon. She looked up at the High Arbiter's box. She gave them nothing but silence. The crowds did not know what to make of her. At first, they hated her. They wanted blood and screaming and drama. They wanted entertainment. She gave them none of it. But slowly, something changed. They began to respect her, not love. The Velthari did not love their prisoners, but they respected strength. They respected survival. And this human, this small, weak-looking creature from an unknown world, had survived longer than almost anyone in the arena's history. 20 victories. That was the number that made Elena famous. 20 victories was considered impossible for a primitive species. Most primitives died in their first fight. The lucky ones survived 3 or 4. 20 was the mark of a true warrior. Elena reached 20 victories in her 9th month. By the end of her first year, she had 37. The other prisoners began to watch her differently too. In the dark cells beneath the arena, word spread about the human female who would not break. They called her Sahavreth in the old Velthari language. It was a word that had no perfect translation in human speech. The closest meaning was something like, the one who refuses to die properly. Elena did not care about the name. She did not care about fame or respect. She only cared about 2 things, surviving and watching. Every day, she watched the guards. She learned their patterns. She memorized when they changed shifts. She noticed which ones were lazy and which ones were alert. Every night she listened through the walls of her cell. She learned the sounds of the prison. She learned which prisoners were broken and which still had fight left in them. She was not just surviving. She was studying. One morning, guards came to her cell. They were different from the usual guards. They wore golden armor instead of silver. Their weapons were better. Their eyes were colder. "The High Arbiter wishes to speak with you," one of them said. "You will come." Elena stood and let them lead her. They took her up through the arena complex. She had never been to these upper levels before. Here everything was clean and bright. The walls were decorated with strange art. The floors were smooth as glass. They brought her to a massive room. Windows showed a view of stars and distant planets. In the center of the room sat the High Arbiter on a throne of black metal. Elena had seen him many times from the arena floor, but up close he was even more disturbing. His pale blue skin seemed to glow slightly. His 4 eyes moved independently, each one watching something different. When he smiled, his mouth seemed to have too many teeth. "The human," he said. His voice was deep and smooth. 37 victories. Quite remarkable for a primitive. Elena said nothing. She just stood there, hands at her sides, watching him. "I have been thinking about you," the High Arbiter continued. "You are a problem. The crowds come to see blood and passion. You give them neither. Yet they cannot stop watching you. You are a mystery they cannot solve." He stood from his throne and walked toward her. His legs moved in a way that seemed wrong, bending in places that should not bend. "I have an offer for you, human. I am prepared to give you your freedom. Wealth beyond anything your primitive world has seen. A position of honor in my household. You could train other fighters. You could live in comfort for the rest of your days." Elena waited. She knew there was more. "All you must do," the High Arbiter said, "is kneel before me. Acknowledge the supremacy of the Velthari dominion. Become a symbol. Show the galaxy that even the most stubborn primitives eventually accept their place beneath us." He spread his arms wide. "What do you say, human? Will you be smart? Will you take the gift I offer?" Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Where are the rest of my crew?" The High Arbiter blinked all 4 eyes at once. He had not expected this question. "Your crew, the other humans from your ship?" He made a sound that was almost a laugh. "They are gone, scattered across the Dominion. Some were sold as servants. Some were sent to other arenas. Some," he shrugged, "some did not survive the journey." Elena's face did not change, but something cold and hard settled in her chest. "If I accept your offer," she said slowly, "can I see them? Can I know where they are?" The High Arbiter waved a hand dismissively. Why would you want to? They are primitives, weak ones who could not even survive sorting. Forget them. Think of yourself. Think of the life I am offering you. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. Then I have nothing to say to you. The High Arbiter's smile disappeared. His four eyes narrowed until they were just slits. You refuse? You understand what this means? There will be no second offer. You will fight until you die, and I will make sure your death is slow and painful. Elena met his gaze. Her eyes were like stones. I have survived everything you have thrown at me. I will continue to survive, and I will never kneel to you. Not today, not ever. The room was silent for a long moment. Then the High Arbiter made a gesture. Guards grabbed Elena from behind. They forced her to the ground. They beat her with metal rods. She felt her ribs crack. She felt her shoulder pop out of place. Blood filled her mouth. Through it all, she did not scream. She did not beg. She did not make a single sound. When they were done, they dragged her back to her cell and threw her inside. She lay on the cold floor, unable to move, barely able to breathe, but she was still alive, and she had not broken. A week later, they threw her back into the arena. Her ribs were still cracked. Her shoulder was still damaged. They had strapped her arm to her side because it could not move properly. The crowd gasped when they saw her. She looked half dead. She could barely stand. Her opponent was a Vorax, a creature made of living metal. It was fast and strong and had blades instead of hands. The fight lasted 20 minutes. Elena won. She did it with one arm. She did it with broken bones. She did it bleeding from a dozen wounds. When the Vorax finally fell, Elena stood over it, swaying on her feet. The crowd was silent with shock. She looked up at the High Arbiter's box. He was staring at her with something new in his four eyes, something that might have been the beginning of fear. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply waited to be taken back to her cell. That night, in the darkness of the prison, other voices began to whisper. They passed messages from cell to cell. They spoke a name, Savreth, the one who refuses to die properly. And for the first time, that name was spoken not with pity or wonder. It was spoken with hope. 2 years, 730 days in the darkness, 63 fights, 63 victories. Elena had become a legend. Stories about her spread through the prison like fire. They said she could not be killed. They said she had made a deal with death itself. They said she was waiting for something. Only the last part was true. For 2 years, Elena had been watching, learning, planning. Every guard rotation was memorized. Every weakness in the system was noted. Every prisoner who still had fire in their eyes was remembered. She had traded food for information. She had listened through walls. She had studied the arena's layout through the angle of sunlight that came through tiny cracks in her cell. She knew this place better than the Velthari who ran it. Now she was ready. The Festival of Dominion came once every 3 years. It was the Velthari's most sacred celebration. For 3 days, they would feast and drink and watch their finest prisoners fight to the death. The crowds would be massive. The betting would be intense. The guards would be distracted. It was perfect. Elena began to move her pieces into place. First, she contacted Grath. Grath was a Kreth, one of the spider-like creatures that had nearly killed her in her first fight. But this Kreth was different. 3 years ago, it had been injured in a fight and left to die in the medical pit. Elena had found it during a transfer between cells. She had stopped the bleeding. She had kept it alive long enough for it to heal. Since then, Grath had been loyal to her, not out of love. Kreth did not feel love, but they understood debt, and Grath's debt was deep. The night of the second feast, Elena whispered to Grath through the bars of its cell. Be ready. Grath clicked its jaws in agreement. Next, Elena contacted Mira. Mira was a Talaxian, a being with 4 arms and blue skin. Mira had been a doctor on her homeworld before the Velthari came. Now she was a pit fighter, forced to use her 4 hands to kill instead of heal. Elena had protected Mira during her first months in the arena. She had taught her how to fight. More importantly, she had given Mira something to believe in. The control collars, Elena said to Mira during a rare moment when they were allowed in the same exercise yard. Can you disable them? Mira's large eyes widened. The collars? They have a central relay. If I could access it, she thought for a moment. Yes, I could shut them down, but I would need time, and someone would need to distract the guards. Elena nodded. You will have both. Finally, Elena contacted Zev. Zev was a Morvain, a species that was half organic and half machine. The Velthari had captured him and his entire ship crew. They had tortured him. They had killed his friends. They had broken his body so badly that he needed metal parts to survive. But they had not broken his mind, and his mind was what Elena needed. The communication system, she said to Zev. Can you send a signal to human space? Zev's mechanical eye glowed as he thought. The arena has a broadcast network. They use it to send fights across the galaxy. If I could access it, I could send anything. But the controls are in the central tower. Leave that to me, Elena said. The night of the second feast arrived. Above, the Velthari were celebrating. Music played, drinks flowed. The High Arbiter himself was hosting a party for the wealthy guests who had come to watch the festival's final battles. Below in the darkness, Elena waited. At exactly midnight, Grath moved. The Kreth was strong enough to bend the bars of its cell. It had always been strong enough. It had simply been waiting for the right moment. Grath crawled through the dark corridors. Guards who saw it died quickly and quietly. Kreth were silent hunters when they wanted to be. The first lock opened. Elena stepped out of her cell. She moved through the prison like a ghost. 2 years of watching had taught her every shadow, every blind spot, every safe path. She freed prisoners as she went. Not all of them. Only the ones she had chosen. Only the ones who still had fight in them. Mira reached the collar control room. 2 guards stood outside. They never saw the 4-armed shadow that came up behind them. Mira's hands moved fast. In seconds, both guards were unconscious. Inside the control room, Mira found the central relay. Her 4 hands worked at amazing speed. Wires were cut, circuits were bypassed, code was changed. All across the prison, control collars sparked and died. Prisoners felt the weight fall from their necks for the first time in years. Some of them cried, some of them screamed. All of them understood what it meant. Zev reached the central tower. Getting inside was easy. The guards were drunk from the festival. They did not expect an attack. They could not imagine that their prisoners would ever dare to rebel. That was their mistake. Zev connected himself to the broadcast system. His mechanical parts interfaced with the Velthari technology. It was not easy. The systems were different. The code was strange. But Zev was brilliant, and desperation made him even better. A signal went out. It carried across the stars at impossible speeds. It reached the edges of human space. It found the ships that had been searching for the missing mining crew for 2 years. It said simply, "We are here. Come find us." By the time the Velthari realized what was happening, it was too late. 300 prisoners stood in the central arena, not as slaves waiting to fight, as soldiers ready for war. Elena stood at their front. She looked at the beings gathered behind her. Kreth and Talaxian, Morvain and Vorax, species that had been enemies for thousands of years, predators and prey, all of them standing together. They took everything from us, Elena said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence of the arena, everyone heard her. Our worlds, our people, our names. But they could not take what we are. She looked up at the High Arbiter's tower. Lights were coming on. Alarms were beginning to sound. The Velthari were finally waking up to the danger. Today, we remind them why they should have been afraid. The arena doors sealed shut, but this time the prisoners controlled the locks. This time the doors kept the Velthari out, not the prisoners in. For 3 days they held the arena complex. The Velthari sent soldiers. The prisoners fought them back. The Velthari sent war machines. The prisoners destroyed them. Every attack was stopped. Every assault was pushed back. Elena did not sleep for those 3 days. She was everywhere, directing defenses, treating wounded, fighting when fighting was needed. She had spent 2 years learning every part of this place. Now that knowledge became a weapon. On the 3rd day, the Velthari brought their heaviest forces. Ships gathered above the arena. soldiers massed at every entrance. The High Arbiter himself appeared on a floating platform above the walls. "Surrender now," he announced. "Surrender, and I will grant you quick deaths. Fight, and I will make your suffering last 1,000 years." Elena stepped forward. She was covered in blood. Some of it was hers. Most of it was not. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Her body ached from a dozen wounds. But she stood straight, and she spoke clearly. "We will never surrender. Not to you. Not to anyone. You thought we were entertainment. You thought we were beneath you. You were wrong." She raised her hand. In the sky above, ships appeared. Human ships. A rescue fleet that had followed Zev's signal across the stars. The Velthari forces hesitated. They had not expected this. They had not expected the primitives to have allies. They had not expected anyone to come. Elena smiled for the first time in 2 years. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," she said. The battle for the arena complex had ended. The war for freedom had just begun. The human ships descended through clouds of smoke and fire. They landed in the arena where so much blood had been spilled. Their doors opened, and soldiers poured out with weapons ready and hearts full of purpose. But there was no enemy left to fight. The arena complex lay in ruins. The Grand Colosseum where millions had watched prisoners die was now a broken shell. The High Arbiter's tower had collapsed. The Velthari flags that once flew everywhere had been torn down and burned. In the center of it all stood 300 former slaves. They were wounded, they were exhausted, but they were alive. And they were free. Captain James Wheeler was the first human soldier to reach them. He had led the rescue mission. For 2 years, he had refused to give up the search for the missing mining crew. For 2 years, he had told everyone who would listen that they were still out there. Now he stood in the ruins of an alien arena, looking at something he could barely believe. "Commander Vasquez," he called out. "Elena Vasquez?" The crowd of former prisoners parted. A woman walked forward. Captain Wheeler had seen pictures of Elena Vasquez. Before the mission, she had been healthy and strong. She had smiled in those pictures. She had looked like someone who enjoyed life. The woman in front of him was different. Her face was covered in scars. Her body was thin from years of prison food. Her eyes were the eyes of someone who had seen too much death and had kept going anyway. But it was her. He knew it was her. "Commander Vasquez," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. "We never stopped looking. We never gave up. We—" Elena raised her hand. He stopped talking. "I know," she said simply. Captain Wheeler looked around at the destruction, at the alien bodies, at the freed prisoners of a dozen different species. "What happened here?" he asked. "We expected to find you in cells. We expected a rescue operation. Instead, we find—" He spread his arms, unable to find the right words. "We rescued ourselves," Elena said. A Kreth moved forward. Its 8 legs clicked on the stone floor. Captain Wheeler's soldiers raised their weapons in fear. "No," Elena said sharply. "Grath is with us." "They all are." She gestured at the beings behind her. "These are not enemies. They are survivors. They fought beside us. They bled beside us. Without them, none of us would be standing here." Captain Wheeler lowered his weapon slowly. He looked at the aliens with new eyes. They looked back at him with expressions he could not read. But none of them seemed hostile. They all seemed to be looking at Elena, waiting for her guidance. "Commander," Wheeler said carefully, "why didn't you ever send a signal? We had ships searching for 2 years. If you had called for help earlier—" Elena was quiet for a moment. She looked back at the beings who stood behind her, the Kreth and Talaxian, the Morvain and Vorax, the dozens of other species she had come to know over 2 years of darkness and blood. "Because I was not the only one who needed saving," she said. "If I had called for rescue in the first month, what would have happened? Your ships would have come. You would have found me. You would have taken me home." She paused. "And everyone else would have been left behind. The Velthari would have moved them to another location, increased security, made sure nothing like this could ever happen again." She shook her head. "I could not let that happen. These beings trusted me. They followed me. I could not abandon them just to save myself." Captain Wheeler stared at her. In all his years as a soldier, he had never met anyone like this woman. So you stayed, he said slowly. For 2 years you stayed in that hellhole. You fought in their arena. You endured their torture. You waited. All so you could save everyone. Not just yourself. Elena did not answer. She did not need to. A Talaxian doctor named Mira stepped forward. She gave us hope, Mira said. Her voice was soft and gentle. When we had forgotten what hope felt like, she reminded us. She showed us that strength was not about muscles or weapons. It was about refusing to give up, refusing to break. The old Morvain called Zev clicked in word as he spoke. Every species here thought they were alone. We thought no one cared if we lived or died. The humans showed us we were wrong. She cared. She fought for all of us. Grath the Kreth made a sound that might have been agreement. Debt, it said simply. We owed. We paid. Now we are even. Now we are free. Captain Wheeler looked at Elena with something like wonder. Commander, do you understand what you've done? The Velthari Dominion has controlled this sector for thousands of years. Their arenas were symbols of their power. You didn't just escape. You destroyed everything they stood for. You united species that have been enemies for longer than humanity has existed. Elena shrugged. It was a very human gesture. I did what needed to be done. She turned to look at the ruins around her. The smoke, the rubble, the flags that had once made her feel so small. They wanted me to beg, she said quietly. They wanted me to break. They wanted to show the galaxy that all species eventually kneel before them. She turned back to face Captain Wheeler. I wanted to show them something different. I wanted to show them that some of us never kneel, some of us never break. Some of us would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. She looked at the former prisoners gathered behind her. And it turns out humans are not the only species who feel that way. The evacuation took 3 days. Human ships carried the former prisoners to safety. Some would return to their home worlds. Others had no homes to return to. For them, humanity offered shelter, a new beginning. Elena was the last to leave the arena complex. She stood in the center of the fighting pit, looking up at the empty seats where millions had once cheered for her death. A young soldier approached her carefully. Commander, the last ship is waiting. We need to go. Elena nodded, but she did not move immediately. They killed Torres, she said quietly. My engineer, the boy I tried to save during the sorting. They killed him 3 months after we arrived. Made the other humans watch as a warning. The soldier did not know what to say. He stayed silent. I think about him every day, Elena continued. I think about all of them. The ones who did not make it. The ones who died in the arena, or in the cells, or during the uprising. She finally turned to face the soldier. That is why I could never ask for rescue. That is why I had to do this myself. Because every day I waited, someone else died. And the only way to honor them was to make sure their deaths meant something. She walked toward the ship. As she walked, she passed the spot where the High Arbiter had died. His body was gone now, but the memory remained. He asked me once why I would not kneel, Elena said. He could not understand it. He thought all primitives eventually broke. He thought fear and pain could make anyone give up. She stopped at the ship's entrance and looked back one more time. He was wrong. Elena returned to Earth as a hero. The news of what she had done spread across human space and beyond. Other species heard the story. The primitive humans had done what no one else had ever done. They had broken the Velthari's power. They had united enemies into allies. They had shown that tyranny could be defeated. In the years that followed, the Velthari Dominion collapsed. Without their arenas, without their symbols of power, their authority crumbled. The species they had conquered rose up. The empire that had lasted thousands of years fell apart in less than a decade. Elena never took credit for any of it. When reporters asked her about her role, she always gave the same answer. I did not defeat the Velthari. We all did. Every prisoner who refused to break. Every being who chose hope over despair. Every person who stood up when they were told to kneel. She would look at the reporter with those hard, quiet eyes. I just showed them it was possible. Years later, when Elena was old and gray, a young journalist asked her one final question. Commander Vasquez, when you were in that cell, when everything seemed hopeless, what kept you going? What made you believe you could survive? Elena was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, former prisoners were living free lives on 100 different worlds. Somewhere out there, species that had once been enemies were working together in peace. I was not going to give them the satisfaction, she said simply. That is all. I refused to let them win. And in the end, that was enough. The journalist wrote down her words, but he knew that no words could fully capture what Elena Vasquez had done. She had shown the galaxy that size did not matter. Technology did not matter. Numbers did not matter. What mattered was the fire inside, the refusal to surrender, the simple, stubborn choice to keep standing when everything told you to fall. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and it started with one woman who never asked to be rescued, not even once.